Hello and welcome to PFF Now. I'm Doug Kyed, joined by Ari Meirov and Brad Spielberger. Guys, how are you doing today at the Combine? Brad, how are you doing?
Glad to be back in Indy.
Absolutely. Ari, how are you doing?
First time we're doing this in person, so I'm feeling really good about this. At the Combine, I'm very busy here. A lot of people walking around, talking, chatting, a lot of gossiping going on, so it's great to be here.
Absolutely. Half of the NFL's head coaches and general managers spoke to the media today, and there are definitely some major stories percolating around the NFL. Let's start off with Aaron Rodgers, because just some behind the scenes stuff here. We thought that Aaron Rodgers would be making an announcement last Tuesday on the Pat McAfee show. Did not happen. We thought again today that Aaron Rodgers would be making an announcement on the Pat McAfee show. Did not happen once again. So we're still waiting on that announcement from Aaron Rodgers about what he's going to do. Stay in Green Bay, request a trade, retire, some fourth option that we haven't even thought of at this point. But Brian Gutekunst did talk to the media today, the Packers general manager, and he said that it's still up in the air basically at this point, that they don't know what's going on and that they'll have to make a decision on some other things once Aaron Rodgers actually does make that decision. And it's going to be a costly decision. So Brad, I'll throw this to you first because you're our cap guy here. If Aaron Rodgers really does sign a contract for something like $50 million a year, how much does that impact everything else that the Packers have to do this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's going to come in around 3 years, maybe $150+ million, which sounds crazy, but that is the quarterback market we're in now. And I think you talk about how it hasn't happened yet. I think the reason there's been no news in general is because that first big domino has to fall for everything to fall in place. And so Brian Gutekunst also talked about Devontae Adams, talked about Devondre Campbell. You can't, as an organization, make moves like that until you figure out the quarterback spot.
Absolutely. And how much the franchise tag window opened last week. It closes on March 8th. It's kind of a pretty short window here for Aaron Rodgers to make that decision. I think that's one of the reasons why we expected it to come last week, so that they would have that full window of time to decide if they were going to franchise tag Devontae Adams. But if this decision doesn't come soon, before that March 8th deadline, then they might have to kind of go into that blindly.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, and you would hope that there's at least some communication between the two sides of what you're going to do. Could you at least tell us where you're leaning at this point in time? Doesn't tell me that's really happened based off what they're saying here, what Brian said today. And Aaron is on the record. He said he wants to make the decision earlier rather than later, and that would obviously help all sides in this. But so far, and I kind of have a feeling he's enjoying all of this. I mean, like the Instagram post, the MVP speech, where it's like, I'm going to thank the two guys that I didn't like last year, but at the same time, I'll let everyone know, thank you for 17 years. He's kind of enjoys probably seeing all these people not know what it is. There are a bunch of different outcomes. No one knows what it is right now, and he's taking his time. But I think everyone understands there is a time and point where you're going to have to come to us, let us know what's going to happen, because at some point we have a lot of business to do over here. This is basically the regular season for GMs and for all those people in the personnel department. And to have this up in the air up until now is obviously a very big domino, and it should come sooner than later. But for now, Aaron is taking his time. He's doing his thing, and eventually we'll get a decision. But everyone here is literally anticipating it. It's the number one topic when you talk to people, and we're all waiting.
I mean, I think that we all probably expect, like, if we had to give a percentage, the highest percentage would probably go towards Aaron Rodgers returning to the Packers for another season, maybe a couple of different seasons. But we've talked about the Packers in this situation. This has dominoes that falls all around the NFL. The Broncos, George Paton, their general manager, Nathaniel Hackett, their head coach, they spoke to the media today. There's plenty of other quarterback-needy teams out there looking for franchise quarterbacks that would love to trade for Aaron Rodgers, but they even have to, they don't have to make decisions until free agency, but there's some other trades that could go out there. Jimmy Garoppolo could be traded. So if a team trades for Jimmy Garoppolo and then suddenly Aaron Rodgers is available, well, you can't have both of them. So it's a fascinating situation. And at the very least, the Packers did say that they hope that Aaron Rodgers makes that decision by the start date of the next NFL year, which is March 16th. But until then, everyone's just kind of in limbo with the quarterback situations.
Yeah, I think one quarterback that it's impacting as well is Kyler Murray in Arizona. And I think he probably should want to wait until that Rodgers extension comes through. And maybe the timing of his statement is a bit interesting, considering the quarterback market always goes up. We know that's a reality, and Rodgers is going to push that market upward. So maybe that's also an underrated storyline of this week, is what's going on with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, if you guys missed it, Kyler Murray's agent, Eric Burkhart, released a statement on Monday, right before the start of the NFL Scouting Combine. Very small font, caps, very hard to read, but that's beside the point. Basically saying that they had presented the Cardinals with a contract extension offer. The Cardinals clearly, since nothing has happened yet, accepted that offer, and he basically said that the ball is in the Cardinals' court at this point. It's basically like the first week or two that Kyler Murray can even sign an extension, because he has to get through the first 3 years of his contract before he gets a new contract. So they're being extremely proactive about this. There's probably some other words that you could throw in there about how they're handling this situation, but that's another thing that is impacting this week, and Cliff Kingsbury talked about it. Steve Keim talked about it today.
They did talk about it today. They didn't really give much information. I mean, Steve Keim basically said that's an agent's job. It was a bit surprising to see an agent go out and do that. Like you said, I mean, he just now became eligible for an extension, and we've seen quarterback deals in the past. They don't get done until June, July, August, sometimes even September. So for it to happen right now was super odd. I did find it interesting that Eric quoted a tweet this week about Aaron deserves to be a $50 million quarterback. Yeah. Yep. There's a reason why he's doing that. That's where he wants his quarterback to be at. So yeah, it is interesting. It's, the other thing about this is, as we've all know, I mean, Kyler and Cliff Kingsbury had the same agent,
Yes.
Eric Burkhardt. I mean, Steve basically said it's not a big deal. Whenever it comes to Cliff, we talk about Cliff. When it comes to Kyler, it's about Kyler. But it is definitely a domino that is important there, because in reality, Kyler would not have been the number one overall pick if not for Cliff Kingsbury there. And on top of that, really, it's hard to envision them splitting them up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if you had the same agent, you wanted your guys to be there, it's hard to envision that happening. At the same time, I've seen some people say baseball. I mean, it's probably the worst time possible for baseball. Like, not right now for baseball, but like, Kyler, he's mentioned that in the past. I don't think it can happen now, but like, his head has been there in the past. So I understand he wants to get paid. There's only been a handful of quarterbacks who got paid in the third year. We'll see if it could join that. But for it to happen right now is just, it's kind of crazy. And, agents around here, that's the number one topic you could talk about with them, because they love talking about other agents. So like, bring this up. They think it's kind of crazy to have it happen now. It feels like a threat, and we'll see what happens. But super early for this to happen.
Cliff Kingsbury certainly didn't say a ton on this subject, but he did say a couple of interesting things. The first of which is that he said that he did not know that this statement was coming from Eric Burkhardt and Kyler Murray. That's certainly notable since, as you said, he shares an agent with Kyler Murray. That is Eric Burkhardt. The other thing he said is that he hadn't spoken to Kyler Murray since that statement was put out. I asked Cliff Kingsbury basically, like, is this a complicated situation? Does it become awkward since you share an agent with Kyler Murray, since all this is going on? And he basically said no, and that's that, he deals with Eric with what he needs to deal with Eric with, deals with Kyler for what he has to deal with Kyler with, and it basically comes down to Steve Keim dealing with Eric Burkhardt rather than him. So maybe, I still think that it's much more complicated than most head coach quarterback situations based on this. But one thing that was interesting in that statement, Brad, is that they said that they wanted to lower Kyler Murray's cap hit for them to be able to sign free agents. Is that even possible, since Kyler Murray's still on his rookie contract? I think his cap hit is $11 million. Could he even sign an extension and lower that cap hit this year?
That's interesting. He may have misspoke there and was more addressing the fifth-year option for 2023, which, because Kyler Murray made 2 Pro Bowls, is going to be about $28 million now on that fifth-year option. So I'm guessing he was more speaking to that year. For 2022, as you mentioned, $11 million cap hit, $5.5 million in cash. You could probably keep it flat and still go out and spend, and knowing where your cash and cap is, that obviously enables you to spend. And they were aggressive last offseason in signing veterans. But yeah, my guess is he meant 2023 with that huge fifth-year option, which they're going to exercise, of course.
Right, absolutely. One other interesting thing that Cliff Kingsbury was talking about with the Cardinals was that they've got Christian Kirk and AJ Green as free agents. I think that we all kind of assumed that they wouldn't be able to sign both of those guys, but he said that Rondale Moore, the rookie from 2021, is going to have a much bigger role in 2022. They want to get the ball in his hands. So I would say that pretty much confirms without a shadow of a doubt that one of those guys isn't going to come back. Other interesting thing there is just that Rondale Moore is a much different player than both of those wide receivers, and Cliff Kingsbury did acknowledge that they might have to kind of change up the offense a little bit because Rondale Moore is a different player, because he's a guy that kind of have to get the ball in his hands. So all of that's kind of interesting, and I think that getting Rondale more involved would probably benefit Kyler Murray in the long run there.
Oh, it definitely will. Getting DeAndre Hopkins back is probably the bigger one. Obviously, I mean, Steve Keim was talking about just losing him. I mean, we've all seen how they started so hot and then it just collapsed in the end. Losing DeAndre Hopkins is a big part of that. Losing your X receiver, not having him out there. arguably the best receiver in football, hurt them a lot. Rondale Moore was a second-round pick who really showed a lot of promise this year. We'll see what happens with Kirk. I mean, he is actually good friends with Kyler dating back to, I believe, high school, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see if they extend him. Adrian Green felt like more of a one-year experiment. Right. So likely move on from him. But again, this is really where all the talks happen here, all the agent talk behind closed doors. We'll see what happens. But, Rondale Moore, second-year leap actually for him. And then Diop coming back is obviously the X factor there.
It's a popular excuse for coaches, agents, GMs. Oh, we haven't talked to anyone yet. Oh, we're going to do all the talks this week. And we've it's early in the week when they all talk. Let's talk about another quarterback. Lots of quarterbacks on the docket here. Carson Wentz with the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard said that I don't have a direct answer for you about how they are going to handle Carson Wentz in 2022. That doesn't bode well for Carson Wentz. Yes. I think that, even if it's disingenuous, a lot of head coaches and GMs commit to a quarterback just so that no one asks them about it, just so that you can say, oh, no, we love that guy. He's our quarterback. Then you can make the decision later to trade for someone else. The fact that he's already saying that we don't have a direct answer on Carson Wentz, not great.
Yeah, there's different levels of votes of confidence, and you could still give a very weak vote of confidence, and you wouldn't even do that. And I think the interesting thing there is that the remainder of Wentz's salary becomes fully guaranteed early in March, early in the new league year, so they have to make a decision pretty quickly if they want to avoid more money becoming guaranteed, potentially changing how a trade or a cut would work. They don't have a lot of time to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely don't. It's kind of reminded me a little bit of Jared Goff last year with the Rams. Lestine was talking, was non-committal, was traded a few days later or a few weeks later. I mean, the report's already out there. Everyone is saying he's gone. He's not going to be there. The way they answered today basically confirmed that. I believe the date is March 19th for that guarantee date, and then it's either a trade or a cut. Whatever happens, they're going to be looking for a new quarterback, and there are some quarterbacks available there. I really don't know where the option is really going to come. That's really the bigger question. Who are you replacing to get Carson Wentz out of there? Because this is a team that really – what is 97% chance of making the playoffs going into week 17, week 18. So he wasn't terrible, he wasn't great, but who are you replacing him with is the bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major question because it's kind of funny because Carson Wentz, it's easier to find teams that could use Carson Wentz than it is to find quarterbacks that would be an upgrade for the Colts over Carson Wentz. I mean, like a team like the Washington Commanders, Carson Wentz would be an upgrade over what they've got right now. The Carolina Panthers, Carson Wentz, no matter what you think about him, he's better than Sam Darnold. There's some other teams around the NFL. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm not sure. I don't think that they would be necessarily interested in Carson Wentz, but he's better than Mason Rudolph.
And I think you have to mention the Colts don't have a first-round pick this year.
Right.
So there is no trading for a big name. There is no getting one in the first round. Is Sam Alger the guy? I mean, I don't think so. It's like, where are they getting the next guy to replace him? And without a first-round pick, it's really hard to figure out who that guy could be. And Chris Ballard doesn't like trading picks also. He loves the draft. So it's going to be very interesting what will they do if they move on.
Right, because, I mean, the free agent options at quarterback, you've got Teddy Bridgewater, Marcus Mariota. Those aren't obvious upgrades over Carson Wentz. You could trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Not an obvious upgrade over Carson Wentz. You're basically dealing in that same tier, shifting names around to try to find an upgrade. So do you have a better idea?
No, I mean, Mitchell Trubisky's in that same group as well. And it's funny that Chris Ballard, back when everyone used to pester him, like, why have you drafted a guy? Why have you traded for a guy? He said, because if you get it wrong, then you're kind of in a terrible situation. And we kind of unfortunately saw that play out.
To paraphrase Rick Pitino, or I think it was Rick Pitino, Andrew Luck is not walking through that door. Peyton Manning is not walking through that door. Maybe Jacoby Brissett could walk through that door, but that's about it as far as the Colts quarterbacks go. I did just mention the Washington Commanders. I found it interesting today. Once again, these head coaches and GMs don't say a ton, but Ron Rivera did at least entertain the possibility that they could take a quarterback with the 11th overall pick. The big thing, this whole year before the draft is that we don't know who that quarterback would be. Usually we know who the first quarterback taken off the board would be. At this point, it could really be any of the top 5 quarterbacks that could be coming off the board at 11 sooner, later, anywhere on the draft
You
board.
talk to 5 different people, you got a different order from everybody. That's
Yeah.
really what the draft is right now. But the draft is definitely a possibility. A trade avenue is also a possibility for Washington. And Ron has been really open about this. He's been going on a media tour and talking about we have to look at upgrade at quarterback, whether it is a free agency, whether it is a trade, whether it is in the draft. They are committed to going to find the guy, whether it's a big name, free agent, or a rookie, whatever it is. They want to go out there and find the quarterback this year because they really believe they have a bunch of building blocks on that roster. And the NFC East, we've seen it in these last how many years, whatever it is. It's not a great division, so it's always open to win, but you have to have a quarterback there. And of course, last year Ryan Fitzpatrick goes down in week 1, hurt your chances right away. Heineke wasn't terrible, wasn't great, but he's not the answer. He's still under contract, but you want to find somebody better there, and they're all in right now to go find that guy, whichever avenue it is.
And there are a number of possibilities, at least for Washington, that would be upgrades. Jimmy Garoppolo would be an upgrade for them. Carson Wentz, I don't know, like that's not the home run I think that they want to hit. And speaking of baseball, Ron Rivera was asked, what would you give up for a quarterback? And he said the analogy that he used was, whatever you pay for a baseball card, that's what the value of that baseball card is worth. He also said that, no one's talking at this point about what the Rams gave up for Matthew Stafford because they won a Super Bowl and it's worth it. So I'm not sure if there's a Matthew Stafford out there that they could actually acquire this year. It's sounding unlikely that any of these top quarterbacks will be moved. But if a Russell Wilson becomes available, if Aaron Rodgers, one of these guys, it does sound like Washington would be willing to give up everything to go and get him.
Yeah, Russell Wilson, said he got asked about it. He's from the Washington area, the D.C. area, and he said, look, I love where I'm at in Seattle, and it certainly seems like the odds of that trade happening are dwindling by the day.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just talk about some other news that came out today. Ari, was there anything just big from today that you think still bears mentioning that came out of the head coaches and GMs or just came out otherwise?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything major. I think Mike McCarthy mentioning Dak Prescott had shoulder surgery. Yep. Not really major. It's a non-throwing shoulder. It was more of a cleanup, but that was a bit newsworthy, I guess. I did find it interesting that Brian Daboll was out there, and Joe Shane actually specifically was asked about Saquon Barkley specifically about possible trades, and he basically said anybody on our roster is basically available, and that team is in a very tough cap situation. It's probably worth monitoring just to see what the Giants do to get under the cap and try to just get some breathing room, I guess. And that's a roster they're taking over right now, trying to build it from the ground up. Obviously, a lot of big contracts there. What they do, I think, in the next couple of weeks to see how they get under the cap. You have some easy guys to move on from, Kyle Rudolph, the punter Riley Dixon, but some other bigger names on their roster. If they move on from them, I think it's worth just keeping an eye on the next couple of weeks as teams prepare for free agency.
Absolutely. Brad, anything else?
Just one other Giants name. I think cornerback James Bradbury also a guy to keep an eye on. One note I thought was Chargers general manager Tom Telesco wouldn't go into specifics, but acknowledged that they have a rookie contract quarterback in Justin Herbert, and they have a ton of cap space. And he was not shy about that reality, and I think they're going to be aggressive and try to build a contending team.
One thing that I think is going to be interesting this week is that the Alabama offensive tackle, Evan Neal, not going to work out this week. The NC State offensive tackle, I'm going to need some help with this pronunciation, so I'm going to put you guys on the spot. I'm going to just call him Icky.
I'm just saying Icky.
Yeah. Icky.
That's where we're at.
So Icky is expected to work out this week. And I think, if he really impresses this week, there could be a possibility that he could, leapfrog Evan Neal, become the number 1 pick. The betting odds are shifting a little bit for that number 1 overall pick between Evan Neal and Icky. I just think that, that's something to keep an eye on because there are some people who think that he might be a better fit for that Jaguars offense with Doug Peterson as head coach than Evan Neal would be. So certainly something interesting there. One other thing is just the Bengals with Jesse Bates. Now, I think it's pretty likely that they're going to franchise him, but Duke Tobin would not say that. He said that, I'm not going to break any news here, but we've only got a week to find out. It seems likely that that's going to be coming down the docket.
100%. No, that's just jam talk. Yes. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on PFF Now. I'm Doug Kyed. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed. Follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad. Follow Ari on Twitter at MySportsUpdate. And keep it on PFF.com for all of your news and analysis.